Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Gaming Fiends. This is gonna be more of a discussion video. Might be a little bit longer. Just gonna be talking pretty much the whole time. No script, anything like that. I'm just gonna be spitballing off the top of my head. So there's probably not gonna be a whole lot of visual stuff here, guys. So if you want to just go ahead and Alt Tab or start playing a game or something like that, go ahead. There's not really gonna be a lot to look at. Just gonna be mostly me talking. I feel like there's some stuff to talk about regarding Warlords of Draenor and the new patch coming out. Not the new patch. There isn't going to be a new patch actually. I'm referring to the new expansion. Um, so they're going to make an announcement. They've already made an announcement for the announcement. We're going to see what the next Warcraft expansion is going to be. I believe it is August 6th. They're going to make the announcement at Gamescom. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say, that's not really a normal stage for them. They always announce the next expansion at BlizzCon. Personally, I've never really been to BlizzCon because I live on the East Coast and just never really bothered flying out there to go check it out. But apparently, they're not going to announce it at BlizzCon this year. They're saving it for Gamescom, which is kind of a crazy move, maybe even kind of a desperate move, just to kind of get the announcement out there as soon as possible, just to let people know, maybe that's why there are some shortcomings in Warlords of Draenor because they've been working on the next expansion, and that might be why some things have felt rushed or um, really just not the content that they normally produce. And maybe that's because they've been working tirelessly on this next expansion throughout the entirety of this expansion, which might seem a little far fetched. I'm not sure if that's true or not. But if it is, that might be good news for the next expansion. But it might be bad news too that they're announcing it so early because I don't want it to seem like it's rushed or whatever, like they're just trying to get through it. Um, they need to put the time and quality into it. Even though I mean I want to see it out as soon as possible. Obviously, I really don't want to be hanging out in patch 6.2. There's really nothing to do. Like right now, I'm just grinding Naxxramas to get this shield for transmog. There's not a lot to do. I'm already finding myself going back and doing some old content. Already I'm just bored with the expansion. Hellfire Citadel, all the raids in Warlords of Draenor. I think most people would agree that, I mean, they did a pretty good job, but that seems like probably like the only thing like they did a good job on. Like, there's obviously a lot of problems regarding garrisons, and just the lack of world content. I think that really was the main issue, is that there just wasn't enough to do outside of raiding, especially when a lot of people don't raid. And I personally, I've raided this entire expansion, normal and heroic. Really haven't really messed with mythic because I don't have a guild. But just most people don't raid. LFR is not really a good representation of raiding. And if I had never raided before and I was just doing LFR for the first time, I might not be super interested in it. Although you do get to see some really cool encounters and stuff like that. And seeing the really cool encounters and stuff like that also kind of just takes away from the raiding experience, because they're so easy in LFR. There's no coordination. You're just downing the bosses like it's a dungeon or something like that. And I personally really dislike that. I can definitely see why they have done it. If you're someone who doesn't do normal raids, then there's really no way for you to see that content, which they put a lot of time and effort into. Um, so LFR obviously makes sense, but I think they need to do something to fix it because just the system it works, or maybe there should be a separate raid. I don't know. That's maybe not, but I think they should do something to fix it. Um, I think that it definitely kind of hurts the raiding experience. I mean, obviously there's differences, not just in difficulty, but as far as mechanics, um, from Mythic and LFR, but it is the same bosses and the same raid and everything like that. And I feel like the actual atmosphere, maybe is pretty similar, despite the contrast in difficulty. If that makes any sense. But yeah, that's something that I hope they might, address in the next expansion. along with a lot of other stuff, and I think they will because they've had a lot of criticism. And it is justified criticism. There's a lot of stuff that they basically just fucked up on, and that they need to like get the shit together. But I think they will, honestly. Unless this next expansion is just ridiculous and rushed, and they just didn't put enough time into it like they did with Warlords. Um, Whereas Warlords, I really can't really solve the like tell you what the problem was. Like, I think it might have just been a bunch of little things. Like, yeah, I would say that this probably was the worst expansion in World of Warcraft. Um, However, if you haven't played any of the previous expansions and you just jumped into Warlords of Draenor, which I think a lot of people did, you might not have thought it was so bad. Like you might have thought it was fine. But if you haven't really been accustomed to the content that Blizzard has delivered in the past, and a lot of people said the game has declined ever since after Wrath of the Lich King. I could kind of agree with that, but I still really enjoyed Cataclysm, although a lot of people might disagree with that. And it just seemed like there was so much more content going on, especially in the old world. Just going back and leveling up some alts, through that new awesome content that a lot of people didn't even play. Um, but that was also kind of a waste of time, although it was really awesome just because leveling up is just such face roll nowadays. Just not just like it's really easy to level up, but it's also really fast to level up. So there's really no need for you to go to all those zones and stuff like that. Plus, if you just buy the game or whatever, you get to start at 90 anyway. Um, so that was a little off topic, just talking about what's wrong with Warlords of Draenor. That was some pretty general statements. I think most people will probably agree with that. Um, Go ahead and post in the comments. What do you think? They should have done differently in Warlords of Draenor. What do you think? What do you hope to see in the next expansion? What is the next expansion? Because there's been a lot of leak stuff like that. Nobody knows really what to expect. Personally, I'm sure if you've been looking at videos like this, you've heard it 100 times. South Seas. Um, that seems pretty likely to me. There's the leaked Dark Prophet or whatever. Talking about just the Isles. Like, I guess it's the other side of Azeroth. I'm not really sure where it is, but I'm not really a lore person. Um, but I think it would be really awesome to see that. It's been rumored for a long time. Another one that I've heard come up is the Emerald Dream. And personally, I probably don't think this is gonna happen, but that would be awesome. Like that's really towards the top of the list for me as far as something that I'd want to see. Would be Emerald Dream expansion. And they've said in the past they don't want just a bunch of lush zones that you're just running through the whole time, but I don't know. I think it would be pretty cool. But although I think with a South Seas expansion, we would see a lot more diversity in the zones, and there's a lot more to work with lore-wise. Although I don't even know what the lore is really. Um, and then I've heard something about a Burning Legion expansion. I after this last raid tier, we fought Archimonde. I mean, we fought Archimonde. Like I mean, that seems like enough Burning Legion for me, at least for the moment. Although it really did seem more like orcs, freaking orcs all over the place. But more orcs than demons. And I like fighting demons more than like fighting orcs, at least at this point. But yeah, it'd be really interesting to see what they come up with. I have high hopes for this next expansion, but I'm not gonna necessarily get super hyped up about it because I was really excited about Warlords of Draenor, and I think it really was a missed opportunity because I was someone for a long time. I've really had my best memories came from the Burning Crusade because I played a little bit during vanilla, but I really didn't. I was such a noob and stuff like that. I never got into raiding, never got into in-game PvP or anything like that. So a lot of my first best memories came coming from Burning Crusade, and um, I was hoping that it would recreate that. And it was kind of foolish to think that just because of the way the content has changed over time. Just really to fit a more casual player. In the past, there was really just all these awesome stuff, that was next to impossible to get. Awesome content that only like a very small percentage of the players got to see. And even though they want all the people to be able to see the content, all that sort of stuff, it really was like a sort of like prestige, like it just felt so much better to actually get to experience it, all the attunement, stuff like that. There's ridiculous legendary quest lines and stuff like that. Um, it just would have been really awesome to see some more of that, I think. Nowadays, especially considering that nowadays would be the actual time when I would actually want to do it again. Like I never really did it in the past, but I would kind of like to experience it. Like during Vanilla and Burning Crusade, I was just kind of a noob, and I never really like got super started off until even Wrath of the Lich King. Um, and by that point, it was the game was pretty much at its prime, but I think it has been kind of a decline since Wrath of the Lich King. Mists of Pandaria, was just kind of a lot of people would say that's a stupid expansion, just because the pandas and all that sort of stuff. But I actually enjoyed Mists of Pandaria. And I even though I don't think it was the best idea, I actually did like what I mean, like they were trying to do something different, like it was completely groundbreaking. It was just something a completely new idea. Just not really part of the lore, not really very Warcrafty, essentially. But I think it could have been a lot worse, and that they did a pretty good job with it, and I enjoyed a lot of aspects of Mists of Pandaria. I thought World of the Draenor was going to be a much better expansion, just as far as the theme, but the execution was really poor, and I was actually really disappointed about that. Um, and I think a lot. I mean, I think everybody was honestly. I mean, it's not. It just was. It straight up wasn't good. Like it's straight up. This was the worst expansion. In my opinion, pretty much obviously the worst expansion. Like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong there, but just the lack of content. I mean, the raids. I mean, the raids were good. The raids were good. I raided. I was gonna be a PvP player in this expansion. I had PvP'd all through Mists of Pandaria. I hopped on my warrior, expecting to jump into the PvP scene as soon as I hit 100. And I mean, Ashran gets a lot of hate, and a lot of that is justified. But I think it was a cool idea off the bat. Just poor execution again. I really just haven't had a good time in Ashran. And obviously, there's a lot of problems with it. But the biggest problem is that I freaking play Horde, and everybody plays Alliance, now. And I'm not gonna switch to Alliance. I'm just gonna keep playing Horde, pretty much no matter what. Um, just because I like playing Horde better, and all my characters are Horde. And I'm not gonna pay for faction transfers and all that kind of bullshit. Um, even if the human racial or whatever all the Alliance racials are better than all the Horde racials. I mean, War Stomp. It has it's not worthless, but it's not like I get an extra piece of gear like a human would. But anyway, that's beside the point. I was going to be a PvP player in this expansion. I felt that it was very unbalanced in a lot of ways because it was um, not just the factions being imbalanced, but the classes themselves. I felt that they were really changing a lot. I like to play Arms Warrior, and I felt that it wasn't super viable. It wasn't unplayable. I don't think it was that bad, but I do feel really squishy. I have decent burst damage, but there's not really a lot of buttons to click. They brought back Rend, which I don't really even care about. Um, and they just got rid of some abilities, changed some abilities, stuff like that. And I think overall the class, might have been a little less fun to play, just from my point of view. Especially since I played Arms Warrior and Subtlety Rogue um, in Mists of Pandaria and PvP, and the Subtlety Rogue really hasn't been the best spec as far as I'm concerned. And Fury, I think maybe might be a little better than Arms, not necessarily DPS wise, but just as far as the survivability goes. I find myself, if I'm doing arenas, that I almost always have to have a healer in twos, just so I can stay alive, because normally I can't. I have to kill something faster than it kills me, and normally I die so fast that that's really hard to do. Um, but yeah, I thought the PvP was really messed up. No new battlegrounds. I mean, I know there's a lot already, but it would have been really nice to see. I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but it was a scrapped dungeon, not dungeon, scrap battleground for Pandaria, and it was going to be like a MOBA map. It was going to be like in Ashara, and I thought that would have been awesome. something new. Just as far as Battleground, and I'm not saying instead of Ashran, maybe just in addition to Ashran, because PvP was limited to Ashran, and if you want to play PvP, then you have to do Ashran, and if you like PvP but don't like Ashran, then you're kind of left stranded, and if you're like me, then you start raiding, because, everyone else plays the opposite faction, you don't really enjoy your class as much. I just pretty much just gave up on PvP. Um, didn't really try to build rating or anything like that. Got my conquest cap, pretty much every week. But other than that, not really super fond of PvP at all. And I think a lot of people tend to agree with that as well. Um, and really, now that I'm thinking about it, a little bit more, just really brainstorming rating. That was the best part about this expansion. I think rating was good. Although, whatever, how many raids were there? Just 3, right? Um, Heimel, pretty awesome. Blackrock Foundry. There's some fights in there, that I didn't necessarily enjoy as much as Heimel maybe. And then Hellfire Citadel I thought was pretty awesome, especially with Archimon being such a huge lore character as the end boss, was pretty sweet as well. Um, yeah, the raids, no problem with that. I was completely satisfied with the raids in every respect. Just didn't enjoy PvP overall, and I thought that was kind of sad because I really like PvP. A lot of people don't like PvP, but I think they should at least show the PvP community a little bit more. And I think they were trying to with Ashran, and it just didn't work out, and it was kind of unfortunate. And I think they put a lot of work into it. Maybe we're trying to make it really good, and it just didn't work out. But it was really the sort of zone that's like 24 hours is kind of cool, but it's not really. I feel as though maybe it's not always played as it's intended. Like if you're playing, Alliance dominates it now, obviously, but it seemed like there was just a lot of. It was just uncontested a lot, like whatever the events, like one side would just go do the events, the other side would push the road, and now they put in the dailies to fix that. But even still, it seems like, and I guess they are coming out with a mercenary mode as well, and that will be interesting. I don't know when patch 6.2.1, I guess it's going to be called 6.2.x, but that'll definitely be interesting. But also, I hate the mercenary mode idea simply because I think that you should be either Horde or Alliance, and you shouldn't be able to just switch automatically like that. Like, I just really don't want to really play Alliance, and I don't feel like I should have to because if I want to win, then I have to play Alliance basically nowadays, and that's not necessarily all true. If I go in the group finder, sometimes I'll be able to find a group that's actually winning Ashran, but I'm just at a disadvantage because of the faction that I chose to play. Especially since Horde, has dominated PvP for a long time. Maybe it's now time for the Alliance to dominate PvP, sure. Um, but it's kind of just ridiculous to the point that, I don't really, it just kind of pisses me off, and I just kind of stepped away from PvP in general. And that's just something they need to fix. The racials, I mean, just freaking balance them. Um, I mean, maybe even give a horde player a better racial like to compete with the alliance ones, or just I don't know, maybe just even get rid of racials, or just make them something that's not as significant. That because your racial should not don't like be the deciding factor in what class you play. Like if you want to play a different race or whatever, but you have to play. If you want to play like I don't know whatever a dwarf and you have to play a human instead because of the stupid racial, or even if that goes so far as to determine what faction you play is based on what racial you have. Um, it's just kind of a poor game design. That's something they need to fix, and I think they will fix it. I don't. It might just be take a while, and I think mercenary mode is the first step towards that. Although I really don't really necessarily like that idea. I want to be balanced as horde. Not have to play alliance to fix it. And I guess the alliance players will be transitioning over to horde, but I think that should be more segregated. Um, the classes should just not be that easy to just start all of a sudden playing with another class. I mean, I'm sorry, like now all of a sudden start just being able to play as the opposing faction. You should if you're playing a horde player, it should just feel like the alliance are the enemy. Like a hostile enemy that you don't know a lot about, and that you're just trying to fight them. Not that you're secretly betraying the horde and fighting with them. I don't know. I just didn't. it's a huge jump for PvP, and I don't know if it's really a good thing or a bad thing yet. You know, I haven't even tried the PTR yet. I don't even care. Um, I got my Draenor Pathfinder achievement. I made a video about that. Basically, flying in Draenor, and I honestly don't even really want to talk about that because who cares honestly at this point? I mean, you know, how is that going to help the expansion? You know, you can fly now. I mean, you should obviously. I mean, that might be fun or whatever to fly in Draenor, but I'm really just not that excited about it anymore. And I don't know how much longer this expansion is going to be out, but I'm almost certain, and I don't even know. They might have even said this, but I'm not sure that we're just not going to see another major content patch for Warlords of Draenor, and that there's probably, and I mean, I don't mind that if they're pouring all their resources into this next expansion. I'm trying to get it out as soon as possible. When it will come out, who the hell knows? What it is, who the hell knows? Um, but I mean, you know, I've heard a lot of people predict that's going to be out during the time of the Warcraft movie, which I think makes sense. I guess I'll watch the Warcraft movie. I haven't really looked into it. The trailer isn't out for it or anything like that. But what was I gonna say? What was I gonna say? As far as the release date of the next expansion, whatever it may be, a lot of people have predicted that's coming out going to be coming out at some point during the Warcraft movie. The release date of the Warcraft movie and the release date of the next expansion are going to be really close together. I think that's a pretty valid prediction, but it's not really like a very good one in my opinion. Not as far as accuracy, but just as far as having to wait that long. Like that's a long time from now, like almost a year, I think. I don't know when the Warcraft movie's exactly coming out, but I think it's like summer of next year. So I mean, you know, damn, like 6.2 is gonna last that long. Like I'm already sick of it, you know. Maybe I'll try to get into join a guild and do Mythic, Hellfire Citadel. But you know, other than that, I'm pretty much done with this expansion and fed up with it. I might just just start going back to the previous expansions, um, doing stuff like that. You know, from old content. You know, get some achievements, stuff like that. But I mean, you know, that's not super. That's just something to like take up the time. You know, in the game, or maybe just not even play at all. Um, until the next expansion comes out. I don't know how many of you guys are going to drop your subscription, or have maybe you've already dropped your subscription because of the disappointment of Warlords of Draenor. But yeah, this is all just kind of some stuff to think about. You know, kind of take it in. Um, I want to hear your guys' thoughts too. Um, Depending on how many of you watch this video, I know my channel really is not taken off yet. But yeah, I'm trying to get some more videos with some good commentary. Maybe get a webcam. I'm not sure. Um, but yeah, I just thought I'd share my ideas with you guys about the current expansion, the release date of the next expansion, and like I said, I'd like to hear what you guys say. If, go ahead, post some comments. I'll definitely respond to it. Um, and like the video if you thought it was good, or dislike it if you thought it was bad, or if you disliked it, but maybe just like it anyway. Just help me out, whatever. But yeah, that's just what I'm thinking, just off the top of my head, about the next expansion, this expansion, whatever. Um, so yeah, share your guys' thoughts in the comments. That's gonna be pretty much it for this video. If you have any other video requests or any questions or anything like that, put it down in the comments. Thank you guys for watching. This was Gaming Fiends.